Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants will be in a listen-only mode until the question-and-answer session of today's call. At that time, you may press star 1 to ask a question from the phone lines. I'd like to inform all parties that today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I'd now like to turn the call over to Ms. Irene Ihere. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to today's FDA webinar to discuss the recently published final guidance document titled 510K Program, Evaluating Substantial Equivalence in Premarket Notifications. I am Irene Ihere of CDRH's Office of Communication and Education, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. On July 28, FDA published the final guidance document, which clarifies the current regulatory framework, policies and practices of the 510K pre-market review process. Today, Marjorie Schulman, the Director of the Pre-Market Notification Program in CDRH's Office of Device Evaluation, will present an overview of the guidance document. Following Marjorie's presentation, we will open the call for questions. At that time, Marjorie and several other regulatory experts from CDRH will be available to provide clarification and answer questions. Today's slide presentation, audio recording, and written transcript will be available on the CDRH Learn section of the FDA website. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Marjorie.
Thank you. Welcome. My name is Marjorie Schulman, and I want to thank you for taking your time today to listen to this presentation. We hope you find it helpful and informative. First, I'll start with a little background. K86-3 Blue Book Memorandum, the guidance on the CDRH Pre-Market Notification Review Program, also known as 510K, issued on June 30th, 1986. It was a general discussion regarding the process of determining substantial equivalence between a new device and a predicate device. It issued prior to FDA implementation of good guidance practices. The new 510K paradigm, alternate approaches to demonstrating substantial equivalence in pre-market notifications guidance document issued March 20th, 1998. It introduced the special and abbreviated 510K programs, and it explains the differences between traditional, special, and abbreviated 510Ks with respect to the scope and submission content. Neither document has been updated since initial publication. So for the background, the draft guidance document evaluating substantial equivalence in pre-market notifications 510K issued December 28, 2011. It was a grand undertaking by a number of dedicated FDA employees who put in a lot of time, effort, and thought into this document. It's intended to offer greater clarity on topics discussed in K86-3 and the new 510K paradigm guidance documents. We received over 400 comments. Most of the comments were on the special 510K, technological characteristics, and predicate device sections. FDA carefully reviewed all the comments and modified the draft guidance document to address those. We do believe we reviewed all the comments and took each one into consideration, and as a result we did, as I just said, modify the document. So the draft guidance document was revised to give a clearer explanation and the intent and value of the primary predicate concept, which I'll explain a bit later, include more examples to illustrate FDA's decision-making process, which we hope you will find very helpful, and include an appendix with a sample 510K summary to demonstrate the level of detail expected in each section, which I'll also go into more detail later. In response to the comments, there was industry concern relating to the inclusion of the special 510K program section, given the connection to deciding when to submit a new 510K for device modifications. So we heard you, and in response, the special and abbreviated sections were removed. FDA intends to finalize these sections separately, and the new 510K paradigm guidance remains in effect. So now we'll move on to the discussion of the final guidance. We are announcing the availability of the guidance titled the 510K Program, Evaluating Substantial Equivalence in Pre-Market Notification 510K. It describes FDA's current review practices for 510K submissions by describing the regulatory framework, policies, and underlying practices. It does replace K86-3 guidance, and it was issued in accordance with FDA's GGP regulation 21 CFR 10.115. The guidance highlights is there is a flowchart modification, discussion of new terms, illustrative examples for different not substantially equivalent categories, and a 510K summary content explanation. I know what I'm saying. We'll get into further detail on these subjects in the following slides. For the flowchart modification, it's been previously unmodified since its introduction in K86-3, and it is updated to incorporate statutory terminology, and the language mirrors Section 513I of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and 21 CFR 807.100. It is cosmetically reorganized. It's for increased clarity and visually streamlined. It is available in Appendix A of the guidance document, and is not intended to be used as a standalone document. The most important message about this flowchart is the decision points did not change. We've introduced some new terms, primary predicate and reference device. Primary predicate is the device, the identified predicate with indications and technology most similar to the device subject, device when multiple predicates are identified. And this can facilitate a timely review and well-supported decision. A reference device is a legally marketed device intended to provide scientific information to support safety and effectiveness. Reference device is not a predicate and cannot be used to support decision points 1 through 4 on the flowchart. There are illustrative examples of each in the guidance document, and there's a glossary of significant terminology in Appendix D. Other terms that may not sound familiar are 1, multiple predicates, which is where 2 or more predicate devices that have been provided to support an SE decision. If using multiple predicate devices to demonstrate substantial equivalence, each predicate device must have the same intended use as the new device, and any different technological characteristics between the new device and the predicate must not raise different questions of safety and effectiveness. Multiple predicates can also include devices such as a multi-perimeter monitor and a device construct. Examples are available in the guidance document. And everyone's favorite term, split predicate, which is using one legally marketed device for intended use and a different legally marketed device for technological characteristics to demonstrate substantially equivalent. The use of split predicates is inconsistent with the 510K regulatory standard. As we try to clarify this in the guidance, you do not need a primary predicate. You do need a primary predicate to get you through, all the way through the flowchart. This is not a change from how we have made decisions in the past. So the illustrative examples, the NSE categories are unchanged and fully explained. We have lack of predicate, new intended use, different questions of safety and effectiveness, and inadequate performance data. The first three remove the device from the 510K pathway. The fourth, inadequate performance data, allows the device to be resubmitted as a 510K with the adequate data. We also have multiple examples of each NSE type described in the guidance. And finally, in one guidance document, we have discussed both intended use and indication for use. The 510K summary is part of this guidance document, and the guidance includes additional discussion and examples on 510K summary requirements and context. Appendix B is a discussion on the 510K summary document requirements, and it provides clarification to facilitate compliance with 510K summary content requirements, which can be found under 21 CFR 807.92. Each subpart of the regulation is explained with suggested content. Appendix C is a sample of a compliant 510K summary, and that's intended to provide an example of the format and the content expected. The information required in the summary follows 21 CFR 807.92. We believe by following these requirements, the summaries will be more helpful to companies by showing what information was required for the predicate and will increase transparency. A file will not be refused during the refuse to accept process for missing information in the summary. This will be a substantive review item, but the summary should contain all the elements outlined in the regulation. One of my favorite sayings by George Bernard Shaw is the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. We hope you find this guidance helpful and it's clarifying the 510K program for you. We want to continue the communication, so comments on this final guidance may be submitted at any time to the following website at electronic comments, www.regulations.gov. We will now take any questions on this guidance or comments or accolades. Thank you for participating. You can send your questions to the Division of Industry and Consumer Education at dice@fda.hhs.gov. And for more information on the regulation of medical devices, please visit CDRH Learn and Device Advice in the medical device section of fda.gov. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question from the phone lines, please press *1. You will be prompted to unmute your phone and record your name. Again, it's *1 to ask a question. One moment, please, for the first question. And there are no questions in queue at this time.
I think we should just give it a few more minutes. Can you just double check to make sure all of the callers understand how to prompt for questions?
Absolutely. Again, to ask a question from the phone lines, please press *1. Okay, and one moment, we do have a question in queue. Our first question comes from Sam Mirza. Sir, your line is open.
Hi, this is Sam Mirza from Philips Healthcare. Mr. Ullman, I think you alluded to it in your presentation that special and abbreviated 510Ks are excluded from this guidance. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But they still are in effect under the new 510K paradigm. And in the draft it came out, it was included all in the draft that we addressed specials and abbreviated, but now it's been, we removed it from this guidance document, and the other one is still in effect. So that has not changed at all. We're still accepting them.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we can take the next caller, please.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Greg Levine. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, hi. Thank you. This is Greg Levine with Ropes and Gray. Thank you for the presentation and the guidance. I have a question about the use of the primary predicate by FDA, and I was wondering if you could explain a little more about the purpose of that and the function it will serve from FDA's perspective. And in particular, I'm thinking because the FDA has said it will accept multiple predicates, particularly if you have a device that's combining features from other previously cleared devices, so if I have, let's say, a device that's combining features from two previously cleared devices, what is the purpose of identifying a predicate? Because it seems like in some instances that could be, frankly, something of an arbitrary determination, which one's predicate versus, which one's primary versus non-primary.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. The purpose of the primary predicate is the device with the indications and for use and the technological characteristics that are most similar to the new device. So it should be identified within the 510K submission. The multiple predicates are certainly allowed also, but you need one primary predicate to get you all the way through the flowchart. Sometimes two things could be equal, and you are just picking one to be the primary predicate. You can also, for a multi-perimeter monitor, you could have the primary predicate be that monitor, so it's really a combination of a lot of devices. I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well, I mean, that, I guess that answers the piece of the question that addresses whether the decision, frankly, could be, flip a coin in some cases. I guess what I'm really trying to understand is when, why is FDA requiring a primary? What is the role of that, and how does that, frankly, matter?
So that's not new to the program. We've always required a primary predicate, and it's really to determine the substantial equivalence. So you need a legally marketed predicate device, and the legally marketed predicate device can be one that's been 510K'd. It could be one that was pre-amendment device. It could be one that's been reclassified or de novoed device. So that's your primary predicate, but then you may change the indication or the technology, and that's where you might bring in other examples. But you have one primary predicate that has the overall intended use of the device that you're looking to market.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Patricia Lehman. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you. This is Patricia Lehman from EmuCore, and I was just wondering if you could tell me if the agency anticipates that there will be any changes on the application forms that might reflect any kind of new term in the new guidance.
I'm sorry, the changes on the application form?
Yes.
Oh, the cover sheet. Are you talking about the cover sheet for?
Yes. Any of the forms, yes.
Yes, we are looking to update any forms that do need to be updated for these changes, and then we're just looking to update that anyway to make some just cosmetic changes that were needed anyway. But we will announce those when they do come out. In the meantime, you're welcome to use the forms that are out there. They're still valid for logging in any 510K or any application, and the information that we pull off of them is the same for the trade name and the company name and the email address, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from JD. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jardin Crépon, calling you from Attendees Corporation in Ottawa. Certainly the question is not exactly on the guidance, but on the mechanism to provide the information to the FDA. Is the electronic method the only method to be used to communicate with the FDA for submission of a 510K?
Yes, that's a good question. We do require an electronic copy of your 510K at this point, an electronic copy and a hard copy. We don't accept just a hard copy. So we do have an electronic submission guidance document that's available on the web.
Yes.
That can walk you through that on how to submit that. So any information submitted to us, even as a supplement or anything that comes through the document center, should include an electronic copy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from James Fedorka. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, hi, James Fedorka from Sylvan Fiber Optics. We have a product that was 510K back in 1991, been around for a while, and we're exploring another product that would be, we feel, is substantially equivalent to the product we have. But I guess if you could please explain to me what a split predicate is, please.
So a split predicate is what we do not accept, and we haven't accepted in the past. Maybe, I'm sure someone out there probably can come up with an example where we have. But a split predicate is where you're taking one legally marketed predicate device, and it doesn't get all the way through the flow chart. It might be not substantially equivalent for a new intended use. And at that point, you're bringing in another predicate to get it further down the flow chart in technology. So really, it's kind of like it really doesn't have a full predicate that can get you all the way through the flow chart. It's almost an imaginary device at this point because we don't have a legally marketed predicate device for it.
Oh, okay. Well, so our product then is already 510K, and the new product, which will be manufactured, will be actually private labeled for us. It's 510K, but I'm not sure if it's going to meet exactly the wording, so to speak, in our 510K that we originally filed.
That's okay. That's the beauty of the 510K process. You don't have to be exactly like your predicate. You can have a new indication for use or new technology.
Okay, great.
Great.
Well, very good. Well, thank you very much. Very informative. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Bob Hoy. Your line is open.
Hi, Bob Hoy from Surgical Frontiers here. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question about the reference device example 1 in the guidance. And as I read it through, it seemed like the actual subject device and the predicate device, the subject device would have made it all the way through the flowchart without the reference device. So my question is, what is the purpose of the reference device if the rationale or the performance data is enough to tell us that the difference in technological characteristics raises no new issues of safety or effectiveness? Why would a reference device be included?
So we're not saying you need a reference device per se. We're saying if you have a reference device that may help the review, then it's certainly helpful to add that. If you can get all the way through the flowchart with just the predicate device, a reference device is not needed. If there's some information that we may gain from the reference device that maybe it's a material that's been used before, so we know what kind of testing or questions are asked, or the material of the device itself or anything like that, that's going to be helpful in the review. But it's not a requirement to have the reference device. It's just any other information you may know about your device that you think would be helpful in showing substantial equivalence.
Okay, so even though it has a different indication for use, the technology has been cleared, and it's helpful to understand how it was cleared.
Right. So that's helpful for us and probably helpful for you too if you look at the other companies' 510K summary, and especially one of these new ones that will appear on the web soon, that they'll show you what testing was required for that technology. And because as previously before and now, new indications go through 510K all the time. So does different technology, as long as it doesn't raise different questions of safety and effectiveness.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Molly. Ma'am, your line is open.
My question has been answered. Thanks.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Ivan Stengel. Your line is open.
Thank you. I am participating only via the audio, and I don't have access to. I didn't have access to the slides, so this may have been more obvious in the slides. But if we're developing technology that appears to have substantial equivalence to legally marketed devices, but it's a new application in a new part of the body, would that then require additional demonstration of efficacy and safety for that particular new use?
I would say yes. So we're going to look at the indication of where on the body it's being used, and then that's probably going to need some kind of data. I would probably suggest that you submit a pre-submission to the division to make sure that everyone's on the same page before you go off and do any studies for the data. So that's a tool available for you too, but that's probably going to need data.
Okay. All right.
I'd say yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Lorraine Calzetta. Your line is open.
Yes. Hi. Good afternoon. My question is regarding the actual designation of the primary predicate. Is FDA now requiring us to actually state in the submission this is the primary predicate, or is it just inferred as you go down the checklist that this is the primary? And because I think another gentleman might have stated that sometimes there's a gray area because you actually have two that could both be primary predicates, and you're trying to combine and give a lot of information regarding the fact that you have a couple of predicates that could fit the bill. So, and then in terms of a reference device, do they want you to actually state this is a reference device, or you're just using the backup information in there?
We would. That's a great question, and we should have made that clearer. We would love for you to clearly label what is the predicate device and what are the reference devices. That's going to help us kind of build like a predicate tree on what was substantially equivalent to what, and go back in time that way. And then the reference devices, we know if all things being equal and there's two primary predicates, well then really you just get to pick one.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Just in addition, if there are two, you would pick the one with the higher class and the one most like the device you're claiming equivalence to. But if all those things are equal, then you would just pick one.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question comes from Steve Giambo. Sir, your line is open.
Thank you very much. Ms. Schulman, my name is Steve Ziemba. Hey, I'm a little bit confused on the difference between splitting predicates or splitting infinities, perhaps is a better way to look at that, and multiple predicates. In other words, I believe what you said was a split predicate is a device that, or at least one device has a different intended use, whereas multiple predicates would have the same intended use, except I heard you say several times that you could use the 510K process to expand or add new intended uses or indications, which I would presume would have needed some data from either some sort of safety and effectiveness study or from another predicate.
So if I can't bring it in as a split predicate and I can't bring it in as a multiple predicate, how do I bring it in?
So, no, that's a good clarification. And you're right that the difference in indication for use of technology probably would require some kind of data. What we're saying for a split predicate is that you don't have one predicate device that can get you all the way through the flowchart. And that was not allowed previously in the 510K program, and we just clarified it for this guidance document. So what you're talking about, if you're using a reference device or another predicate, you can bring that in as long as you have one primary predicate that gets you all the way through the flowchart.
So to use the example, to use the example in the guidance document, you've got a knee implant, whatever it was in there, that is cleared with material A and whatever the indicated use is, and say, well, I want to bring in another knee implant that's made from a different material, and maybe it's for a slightly different population, like maybe an older or younger population. Is that appropriate to use as a multiple predicate?
That's a multiple predicate. No, I'm sorry. That's a reference device. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, hold on one second.
Right. This is Dr. Joni Foy from the Office of Device Evaluation. So just to clarify, the example that you're talking about is actually a reference device. We don't consider a reference device a predicate. When you are utilizing multiple predicates, it is two or more devices that you can walk all the way through the flow chart. And so the distinction that we're trying to make with identification of a primary predicate is to pick the one predicate that you think is most similar to your product. It's not a requirement that you have to only identify one, but it helps to streamline the review process because we look and your characterization and comparison is done to that particular product. So that's the impetus for a primary predicate, is to try to streamline both the testing that you do on your end as well as the review process on the agency's side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Foy.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Craig Combs. Sir, your line is open.
Hi, this is Craig Combs, Combs Medical Device Consulting. Ms. Schulman, we're still trying to sort through this issue of when different technological characteristics raise new questions of safety and effectiveness. And you provided several examples, and I'd like to focus in on that first one that you did of showing that different technologies have the same intended use as far as serving as biological indicators. That's on page 21. However, when I look at that specific example, I don't see that they do raise new questions of safety and efficacy. I mean, the main questions of safety and efficacy for any diagnostic like that are sensitivity, specificity, false positive, false negative. They're the same for both assays. Now, certainly they do raise different testing methodologies because they have different technology, different testing methodologies to show that they meet the same criteria. What we're not understanding, particularly because I don't want this to be chilling on innovation, how is the need for different ways of testing the methodology interpreted as new safety and effectiveness questions?
So we look at that because these questions were not asked with the predicate device, and that's what we consider a different question of technology. So that would be a question that wasn't asked with the predicate device, and that's why it would be different. Again, that's not new to the decision-making process. Those are ones that we would have found not substantially equivalent before the issuance of this guidance document. I can understand what you're saying, that you may not read it the same way, but that's what we believe, that it is a different question of technology because it was not asked in the predicate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Robin Statzinger. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Robin Statzinger calling in from Aculab. Thank you for your presentation. In a follow-up to the last question, and I think it kind of leads into my question. So I think one of the things that we're a little concerned about are if we use a predicate that has a 510K from maybe 5 to 10 years ago or even further back, a lot of times the information in a 510K summary is pretty vague. It doesn't have as much detail as what FDA is now requesting in this guidance. So we may not know whether the agency had evaluated certain aspects of safety and effectiveness in that review. So I guess then my question would be, does FDA expect to receive a lot more de novo requests? And some of these de novo requests may come after an NSE letter. So it seems like in the guidance there's a lot of examples of when you would get an NSE, and based on maybe some of the things I'm hearing now, it sounds like there may be a lot more NSE letters that are going to be given out to industry, and therefore perhaps more de novo requests.
Yes, thank you for your comment. We do not expect the NSE rate to increase. We do not expect to issue more NSE determinations. If you had a question on what information was required for maybe the predicate device, you could always submit Q-sub and discuss it with the division. But we're looking for the change in your technology from the predicate that would be a different question of safety and effectiveness. So that you don't necessarily have to know from the summary what was asked in the other, in the predicate 510K. You can also request the file through Freedom of Information if you're interested in that. And that's why we're hoping that these summaries, that the part of the reg that's been in the regulation since the inception of the summary and the statement, is going to help with questions exactly like this.
Thank you. Just one other follow-up question. Does FDA feel that this guidance will have any effect on bundled 510Ks?
No, we do not feel that it should change anything about bundling the 510Ks. If you could bundle before, you can bundle now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Elaine Lee. Your line is open.
Thank you. Thanks for the webinar and the chance to ask questions. This is Elaine Lee from Intuitive Surgical. My question is also on reference devices. I was a little confused by one of your slides that said a reference device cannot be used for a decision point on the flowchart, but in the guidance it talks about using the reference device for supporting scientific methodology at decision point 5A. So I was wondering if you could just clarify what the distinction was regarding what you're trying to say about not being used as a decision point.
So basically that kind of ties into the split predicate. You can't use a reference device to bring in another predicate to get you past that decision point if you don't have a legally marketed device that can get you all the way through the flowchart. Okay. For the first 4 points, on the flowchart. So that's why, but it certainly is going to be helpful to the reviewer and for you to include that, so we know what kind of information you're looking for. So that's all we meant by that for the reference device, that it shouldn't be to get you further down the flowchart, but it certainly has a part in the review.
So you mean that you can't use your reference device to get you through the first 4 decision points? Is that what you're...
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the intended use, the predicate, the legally marked predicate device, intended use, new technology.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Claude Berthorn. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, good afternoon, Mrs. Schulman. This is Claude Berthorn. I'm with John Gillespie of Enterprise International, FDA consultant. We've talked to you before. Thank you for your presentation, and nice to talk to you again. I take the opportunity today to ask you if you have any plan to open a new category down the road of 510K in the future for lack of a better name, I'm labeling this category a Me Too product. And let me define what I'm thinking about. This is when the same device is already cleared multiple times by independent OEM of the same manufacturer. Obviously, the situation is the manufacturer did not file a 510K, and then, that part component is actually a full device, and each distributor is filing a 510K. So FDA already has the information, already has all the tests, safety and effectiveness has been demonstrated. We're wondering why, how we could shortcut, in a way, a device that's already been approved and in the knowledge of the FDA. As an example, there is a manufacturer of a dental sensor in France who then is imported in the U.S., and there's 8 companies that have filed the exact same sensor under different names, etc. And we're about to do a 9th one, and we're kind of like frustrated. We think this should be simplified, and certainly equivalency has been demonstrated.
So thank you for your question. I do understand what you're saying. And you're right, if the person had filed a 510K, then the private label distributors would be exempt under the 510K program, and that's in the regulations. We don't have any, right, we don't have any plans of making another type of 510K. Has anyone talked to the manufacturer and suggested that they submit a 510K?
We have actually. They don't want to consider themselves a medical device manufacturer, and that's kind of an odd situation because of the physical characteristic of the device. They are a electronic wafer company, but actually the device they produce is the exact device. Software is simply the additional components, but there are already 3 companies using the same software. So that's kind of a odd situation. We wish we could have access, that FDA reviewers would have access to the information and could say, yeah, you're right, it's the same thing. Let's take a shortcut. We have a ruling here or a specific category that allows Me Too products, if I can call them that way. And we understand there are legal issues of reviewing other people's file, but on the other hand, this would simplify the work at FDA. The distributor is always willing to pay the fee, and if the product is the same, and we think that there should be something about this issue.
Right, I understand what you're saying, and we may have to discuss this later offline. There is something I can discuss with you later about a master file. Maybe that company would like to submit a master file, and there's no charge for that, and put that proprietary information in the master file, then the other ones could reference it. They're still going to have to submit a 510K, but I think we may want to discuss this later offline.
Thank you so very much. I look forward to do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And the next question comes from Cheryl Wagner. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hello, this is Cheryl Wagner. Thank you for the presentation today. I just had a quick question. You had mentioned about there will be additional new guidance on special and abbreviated. Do you have an estimated timeline for when that may happen?
That's a great question, and no, I don't. Not this year. I think that's a safe bet.
Late in the year for that already. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry, we don't have a better answer.
Thank you. And the next question comes from Kelly Kawarukochip. Your line is open.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. My name is Kelly Kawarukochip, and I work with Stryker. My question is in regard to combination devices. So I noticed here that the guidance is signed off by CDRH and CBER. And I guess my question is more or less, when you have a combination product, you're taking 2 regulated components that have, say they have the same intended use, but when you add them together, you're inherently altering the technological characteristics. Is this kind of indicating that without being able to use split predicate, most combination products would have to be would have to go down the path of either a de novo or a PMA?
So that may be a bit specific for this because we do have plenty of 510K devices that may have a drug component or a biological component. It doesn't necessarily mean it would be not substantially equivalent. We may have to go to the Office of Combination Products to see which center would take the lead on it.
Okay,
but go ahead.
So would you be able to reference both if both of the drug and device were legally marketed beforehand? You would be able to talk to both of those, or would you have to pick one of those as a primary predicate?
You would need to pick one as a primary predicate, and then if you're adding the drug or the biologic, but we may have to discuss this. If you have something specific in mind as opposed to just a general question, we'll probably want to discuss that with you before you get on the path of submitting any kind of application to make sure it's not a NME or anything like that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, new molecular entity.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Abby Makuchi. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hi, my question is around primary and predicate and reference devices. So for submissions that go in now, is it an FDA expectation that every submission, if there are multiple devices, clearly identify primary and reference devices? And if you did get a submission in the next month or so where a primary predicate was not identified clearly, would you refuse to accept?
So no, we would not refuse to accept it. And anything that's currently under review, we're not going to contact the companies and go back and ask for which was the primary predicate and which were the reference devices. It's just for any ones in the future. And if you have one that you've already prepared and it's ready to be sent here, we don't expect you to redo it at this time either. So it's not going to be a refuse to accept item.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Harlow Tilkey. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, this is Harlow Tilkey with Starkey Hearing Technologies. Thank you for the seminar and the chance to ask questions. I was looking at your table, and I was wondering if you advocate using that table as well for determining whether you need to send in a 510K for a modified device, or if you can use that to help you determine if a letter to file is sufficient.
So no, this is not the guidance document that you would make that decision. You would go to the when to submit a 510K for a change or modification. That document is still in effect, and that's the one that you would reference to make that decision on whether or not it's a significant change that would require a new 510K.
Okay, all right. I understand. I just needed some clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Raj. Sir, your line is open.
Hi, this is Raj Kasperkar, CARES USA. I think you actually already answered my question. My question was similar to the one posed before as to when this is effective, and if we are submitting in the next few weeks, would you expect this new terminology?
Right. So for the reference device and all that, the summary, of course, we would expect to follow the regulation, but it will not be a refuse to accept item.
Okay.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Marcia Zucker. Ma'am, your line is open.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Do a lot of work with point-of-care devices. And so we're working with whole blood devices. Usually we have a point-of-care predicate and a laboratory analyzer as a reference analyzer. Now, since the point-of-care predicate would get us through points 1 through 4 in the flowchart, would it be then reasonable to assume that when doing the accuracy studies, the method comparison studies, be done to the reference is more, or which is generally assumed to be closer to truth than another point of care device?
That is an excellent question, which I do not have an answer for you right off the bat. I can tell you a couple things that you can do right now. There will be an IVD roundtable scheduled for Tuesday, November 18th, 2014. But in the meantime, we can have you contact our Division of IVD Devices, and they could help you with that specific question. I don't have the response right here, but we will get you the response as soon as possible. So you can send the question to the DICE address at fda.hhs.gov, and we will certainly get you a response. I'm sorry I don't have a response for you now.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just send a note to the DICE email.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from John Beasley. Sir, your line is open.
Thank you very much. My question relates to understanding all these definitions when you put them together. So, for example, we note that you have definitions for intended use, you have definitions for indications for use, and then you have these new definitions for primary predicate and multiple predicates. So when submitting a 510K for a change in the clinical context or the clinical setting, or the setting, so you're changing, for example, from clinical use to home use, all right, is it a correct assessment that you cannot use your own device as a primary predicate because your original device is cleared for the clinical use because there's a difference in indications for use and intended use?
No, you can use your own device as the primary predicate, and you know the most about your device. The only reason maybe you would want to use another one is for any kind of maybe human factors testing or anything that you may have gotten out of the other file to know what kind of data would be needed going from one setting to another. But you certainly can use your own device as the primary predicate.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So thank you very much. I'm still a little confused because it sounds as if it's a split predicate in that case, but I'm not really sure. So maybe I should look at it a little further.
Right. Now, you have we could look at it further, and I can further explain, but it's not necessarily a split predicate. You're just bringing in a reference device to show that this has been cleared for the other setting. But
okay, Marjorie. Okay, thank you very much. We'll talk further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Brenda Howell. Ma'am, your line is open.
Hi, Brenda Howell from IMDX. We're wondering that, given the fact that you said it's necessary to choose a primary predicate that will take you all the way through the flowchart, is there any advantage in FDA's eyes to submitting with multiple predicates if you already have one that carries you through the flowchart?
No, that's totally your choice in making your best showing of how you're substantially equivalent to a legally marketed device. If there is one predicate and that gets you all the way through, that's perfectly fine. We're not insisting on multiple predicates. It's just if there are additional ones that maybe can help the FDA with the review, and then we can maybe leverage any of that kind of information or look up a previous decision to see what kind of questions were asked. That's where it may be helpful, but it's certainly not a requirement, and plenty of devices go through the process with just one predicate device.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and there are no other questions in queue at this time.
Thank you. This is Irina here. Thanks again for participating and for your questions today. Please remember that the slide presentation, audio recording, and written transcript of this webinar will be available on the CDRH Learn website in 3 to 5 business days. For this and other regulatory information, please visit our industry web resources at Device Advice and CDRH Learn in the medical device sections of FDA.gov. As always, we appreciate your feedback. This concludes today's webinar.
Thank you. That concludes today's conference. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.